Nice to be in orbit.
Stream. Thanks for joining us today. We were just looking at the Gnomon 2020 Student Reel, which pretty much represents everything that we are training artists to do. If you'd like to know more about that, my colleague can drop a link in the chat. But my name is Adam Hartel. I'm a Gnomon representative, and I'm pleased to be your host this evening. There's just one thing I'd like to do before I introduce our guest, and that is to thank Lenovo. Lenovo continues to help sponsor these events and make these kinds of educational and industry events possible for you. So big thanks to Lenovo. And with that, guys, I would like to introduce our guest, Giovanni Nakpil. And we're in for a great treat tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Giovanni Nakpil is a senior design evangelist and creative director working at Adobe. He is deeply influenced by the magic of sci-fi and horror films. His multidisciplinary interests have led him to explore a variety of roles across the United States, such roles as digital model supervisor at Industrial Light and Magic, 3D artist at Valve, and art director at Facebook. During his time in tech, Gio took on the challenges of pioneering emerging consumer products for the world of virtual reality. So with that, Gio, I'd like to welcome you to the stream. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to Gnomon. Yeah.
Yeah, so our event this evening is called Mastering Virtual Reality Sculpting and Adobe Medium, and I am really excited for what you're going to be showing us tonight. Excited to be able to ask a few questions, and those of you in the chat are going to have opportunity to type your questions in the chat as well, and we'll do our best to bring those up to Gio, but we'll definitely have some time towards the end to address the questions that have come up. So with that, Gio, take it away. The floor is yours, sir. Cool.
Well, I don't know if how much mastering we're going to be doing with such a small amount of time, but so first of all, I have to apologize. If I'm not looking at you guys, it's because my camera cord is very short, and so I'm looking at the screen here. But so let's get started here. I'm going to go ahead and share my slideshow. Sorry. Let me. Oh, here we go. Can you guys see this okay?
Yeah, it just came up.
Okay, awesome. So to give you guys a brief background, in my previous life before Adobe, I was, as mentioned, in the film industry for 12 years, working at ILM. You know, that was my sort of dream job ever since I was a kid. So I was very fortunate enough to be able to land a very awesome position there back in the days of Star Wars Episode 2 and you know those prequels. But yeah, so there at ILM, the last show I worked on was the Avengers. As you guys can see here, my favorite character ever since I was a kid was the Hulk, and I was able to both supervise Avengers, the first one, and also be able to work on the Hulk, which was an awesome opportunity. I led a team. You know, obviously it's not just me. It's it takes a village to create this green guy, and you know he was a tough one. But and after around Avengers, or actually slightly before Avengers, I was already kind of feeling a little constrained at ILM, like I wasn't really growing enough, because I've been there for 12 years. You know, that happens when you're in a place for such a long time. So I decided to look for other opportunities outside of film to be able to flex the other side of my artistic capabilities that I wasn't flexing. So I was fortunate enough to get a job at Valve Software, which, you know, I was a big fan of, and I was there for about 2 years at Valve when I heard about this Kickstarter for this virtual reality headset that was going around, and it was gaining a lot of steam. And then Facebook acquired that company, Oculus, and so, you know, long story short, I was able to get a job at Oculus, and I was there for quite a long time. You know, I was there in the beginning when before the Rift came out. So the team I was in, we were fleshing out a lot of the early experiences in VR, trying to kind of figure out, you know, what that would be. But yeah, I was there at Oculus, and it was at Oculus where I met a small group of developers developing this sculpting app in virtual reality. And of course, me being a character artist, you know, that I gravitated towards that team. And, you know, that team is, you know, spoilers, the Medium team, obviously. And so we developed a really good relationship where I gave them a lot of feedback in terms of evolving the software and you know, doing workshops and stuff for them. So when they went to Adobe, I went to Adobe with them, and that's what brings me here. So I'm just gonna, on the screen, I shared the social media side of things of where my work typically is. I usually post on Instagram. That's sort of my main social for a lot of the updates that I do for my art. I'm also on Twitter, ArtStation for portfolio stuff. But So what's this presentation about? Obviously it's virtual reality. So I'm going to talk about forms a lot. Regardless of whether I'm using Medium in VR or ZBrush or Clay, forms is always the fundamental important aspect of sculpture, in my opinion. So it just so happens that Medium, as you'll see, hopefully, is very, very powerful when it comes to sculpting forms, and we'll go through that. But before we get into VR, I wanted to touch on sort of my journey in using Medium, because it's such a new thing and people are curious, obviously, but people are also intimidated. And I think through that intimidation, people tend to not want to use it. So I just kind of want to take you through my sort of journey in actually first not really liking it, and to now, being a quote unquote evangelist at Adobe, talking about the software because I love it. So just as painful as it is, I'm going to show you guys my early attempts at Medium, just to kind of hammer the point across that there is a level of learning curve that's pretty steep at first, especially for people who haven't really had the chance to sculpt in clay, because it is in 3D. It's like it's there in front of you. It's very dimensional. So there's some things people need to get used to, as I was doing these. And I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, I'm going to try and sculpt something a little bit more representational, interesting. But then I was like, you know what? It's just not for me. It's too different. I'm comfortable in ZBrush. That's my jam. So I set aside Medium for a good 6 months. But at the back of my head, there was something that was nagging in there, and I was like, man, come on, Gio. The voice was saying, just go, push through. There's a lot of possibilities that I was thinking that the software could do, because around that time, the work that was being showcased were a lot of really cool, like cartoony, stylized stuff, sort of like blobby characters, which was, I totally love that. But I wanted, in my head, I decided to validate Medium as a software for, that can handle a lot of the more realistic anatomical works that I'm used to. So I went at it again, and this was a turning point in my using of Medium, because as soon as I did this, I look at it now, there's a lot of lumpiness and error, but when I was able to do this, I'm like, okay, this is cool. I can see something here, and then from there, I just started doing a lot more story-based creations, because when you're in VR, like typically I'm used to doing solitary characters, because I'm a production artist, but all of a sudden you're in VR, and then you have this ability to create a world, an environment with a lot of your creations, and put your viewers in there with you, or with your creations, I should say, right? So, a flat monitor can never communicate the feeling of, if you put on the headset, you being in here with these characters to scale. Maybe you're the size of a kid or the father, but it's like you're really there. And that was a very powerful thing, and it ignited a lot of activity in my imagination. Like I wanted to tell stories, whatever they may be. It's like vague stories at this point, like kids on a turtle. But it's just it brought up a lot of life in how I thought about my art, versus like T-pose character, flat shaded. So just more further explorations here. This one, the prior images were Medium before the team put in the Move tool. And so once they put in the Move tool, it was on for me, man, because it was hard to convey forms without Move tool, obviously, but I found ways to to get around that. But when they actually finally added the move tool, I was able to create forms that were a lot more to my liking, I should say, because forms is I'm very, very specific when it comes to forms. So this was obviously Bruce Lee fighting a demonic monster. And, you know, I'm going to place my bet on Bruce Lee here. Okay. This one was created in Medium, but brought into ZBrush for refinements. So one thing I want to stress in this presentation is Medium is not a solitary island, right? It's just like any other tool in your toolkit. You can take it out as an OBJ, bring it into Maya, bring it into ZBrush, Mudbox, what have you, and refine there, and then bring it back in Medium if you want to. So for this one, I did, I believe, let's say about 70 to 80% in Medium, and the rest was, you know, like using the damn standard clay buildup tools that are my staple tools in ZBrush that I like to use. ZBrush as well. This was in collaboration with Carlos Fuente, my mentor. I always like to say that because I am who I am because of his teachings. So props to Carlos always. But we collaborated, the team, myself and the Medium team collaborated with him on this one for Monster Palooza, one of the Monster Paloozas. And I built it in Medium, refined it in ZBrush, and we ended up printing this really, really like at a really good scale. Painted by Tim Gore, who's like a visual effects or special effects, practical special effects painter. Did a lot of big movies and such. But yeah, so tertiary and detail forms were done in ZBrush. A lot of the layers of noise here, but for the most part, the main forms, the primary to secondary to even some of the bigger tertiary forms were all done in Medium. Of course, I got to do a Hulk of my own. This was all done in Medium. I just imported it in ZBrush to see the shading better, because I really do like some of the matte caps in ZBrush for form evaluation. So this was just straight up from Medium, the raw file, so you guys can see what it looks like in other softwares. For this one, it's all entirely done in Medium, but this render I think was in Marmoset. But my intent with this was like, people are chattering. It's like, oh, Medium's not really good with detail. It can't do detail. Well, I'm like, okay, well, let's see. Let's prove you wrong. And so I did this. All scales were hand placed. It took a long time, but this is how clay artists in practical effects would have done it, and Medium is very much akin to that, which is what I love about it. As you'll see later, I'll show you the process. And this was 3D printed by Gentle Giant and painted by Gentle Giant as well for one of the Monster Paloozas. And just gonna go through quickly some of my older works or newer works. I'll open these up in ZBrush, sorry, in Medium as well. Okay, just breezing through. This was a creature I had done for a Substance live stream, all done in Medium, and then textured and materials in Substance. And this was an iRay render. So, okay, with that, I'm gonna stop sharing and actually reshare my Medium window. All right, so it's time to get into VR. Let me just drink here. Alrighty. Can you guys see this okay? Are we good?
Yeah, it's looking great.
Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, well, so when you load up Medium for the first time, this is what it looks like. And let me just open up some some files here. Some of the newer works that I had done, actually. I love the marching logo. It's so cute. All right. So in talking about form, right? Like, since this is going to be like, yeah, we are in VR, but I'm going to be talking about traditional concepts like form. For me, in my opinion, ever since I started using Medium, I have become a better sculptor because of the fact that I can gauge and implement form dimensionally. Like, when I say dimensionally, again, it's hard to communicate it with you guys watching this from a 2D screen, but if you're here in VR with me, the fact that I can scale this up, turn it around, look at this particular form right here. You know, when I'm looking at form, I'm looking at the specular highlight, right? Like, if I'm gauging the cleanliness of this form just by how straight that highlight is. If that highlight is wobbly, that means this form is unclean. But, you know, I do that in ZBrush, but in Medium or in VR, I could just go in there and really skim the surface and just get really specific with it. But, you know, that I do that throughout the entire piece, or throughout the entire parts of any character that I do. And this one was a weird one that I just sort of like happened. I was just kind of sketching gesturally in Medium here, and somehow this form came out of it. I mean, I love. I've got a love for weird things, having watched a lot of horror films and sci-fi in my youth, you know. Just kind of going through some of the newer works that I had done lately before I do the demo. Okay. Again, my main thing is trying to convey naturalism in the melding of forms in any character or anatomy. So this one was fun because, you know, I really got to study. You know, I was rusty at this point when I was doing this, when it came to anatomy. So I really took the time to restudy a lot of like how the hand is configured and how the face, you know, structurally, how it is. You know, still always learning, but this was a fun one to do. You know, add some sort of magical elements to it. This one. So in talking about, like, you know, more storytelling aspects of my work, again, it's one of those things where it's a feeling, right? I was sketching something, and this idea of this woman in a dreamlike state interacting with this ethereal kind of fish, while resting on, you know, standing on top of a tree trunk in a swamp or something. And it's just how my mind works, I guess. But the scales were hand placed here, one by one, and, you know, people have asked me if there's like a stamp method in Medium where, like in ZBrush, you know, you can just stamp the details. The answer to that is no. Right now, I don't know if the Medium team has any plans in the future about that, but the thing I like about hand placing is I get to define that flow. You know, I mean, for me, it's a zen way of just losing myself in my art, and I did that with this one, with this fish. So that. Let's see what's let's open up.
Hey, Gio, while this next one's loading, we've had a couple of our viewers wanting to know if you've been able to sculpt using the Quest 2 yet.
No, I'm using the Rift. I will get a Quest 2 soon, so I'll be able to give feedback on how that is. I hear the optics are actually much better than the Rift S. I mean, the Rift S compared to the Rift, like it's quite a big jump in terms of like how clear it is what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I've not had the chance yet to try the Quest. So just wanted to again show more of a detail, you know, how far you can take detailing in medium. I mean, I could honestly take this farther. At some point, it's like, you know, you just have to suggest the detail, right? But that's some hard surface work here. And then last one. Well, let's open this one. Any more questions, guys? Feel free to ask. I can answer questions as I'm talking through. So.
We've got some questions about when you sort of were first beginning to sculpt in VR. One viewer is wanting to know if you had any discomfort with regards to dizziness in the beginning.
No, I never did, and I'm one to actually be quick to be dizzy. Like, you know, I can't really ride roller coasters or any of that stuff for long periods. And the reason why users don't feel dizzy in medium is because you yourself have control of the camera. Whereas if you know, I'm just a static you know, like I don't have any control of the world, and the camera is being moved without my permission, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that's when the motion sickness kicks in. But no, I've never had any motion sickness. Maybe in times when, like, say, you know, I'm working like monument size, and I'm like doing this, and it feels like I'm falling. You know?
That makes sense.
What I do is I kind of zoom out.
Yeah.
Hey, it's not zoomed down there. And to circumvent that, essentially. But one thing I do want to communicate with working in VR is, you know, for clients, let's say, if this was a creature for a film or a prop for a film, that, you know, like, say James Cameron needs a statue for his next film in Avatar 3, and you know, you're hired to sculpt it. You're seeing it one-to-one as what it would look like when you print it out or fabricate it after you export it out as an OBJ or what have you. Whereas in softwares like ZBrush or other things, you know, you're always going to battle it out with that camera setting that distorts your model. With here, how I see this sculpture in VR is exactly how I would see it in reality. Like, there's no surprises there. Like, proportionally, I can just, okay, yeah, it looks good, print it out. Then I'm confident that that's pretty much what it's going to look like, right? Proportionally. And that's a very important thing, because, you know, it is essentially like a physical thing in front of you. It's just you're in VR. You know, this feels like it's really there, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Probably block that.
Well, and there's nothing quite like going into VR and seeing something at scale. The first time that happens, it's a real game changer.
Exactly. Like, yeah. I mean, you can scale this down to like tabletop size, right? Or monument size.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have picked another sculpture for scaling, but yeah, as you can see, it's the range of scale can vary, right?
Now we've had, since you showed us the fish, we've had a lot of questions come in about hand placing those scales. And I think a lot of viewers are really curious to know if you're going to kind of show us a little bit how you do that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Awesome.
I'll go through the whole process of, after I show this, I'm gonna attempt to create a monster from scratch. Now, since people are talking about scales, maybe let's do a creature from the Black Lagoon or something. Just show you guys some. I want to show my process of like, okay, it's a blank slate. Let's create something. Let's have fun with it, and let's see what happens. So,
awesome.
Clipping off the safety net a little bit here, but and I just wanted to show this one for the use of image planes, and I want to credit the artist here. Obviously, this is Andy Burgultz, one of my favorite sculptors. He goes by Monster Papa, and this is also Andy right here. I should have grouped them. And this group here is Tom Cugler, whose works I'm also a big fan of, and he does these really realistic, not realistic in terms of like that looks like a person, but it's just very imaginatively realistic looking, fantastical creatures, I should say. But typically when I work on a character like this, for example, like this hag creature, I like to put in image planes as reference. And one of my favorite things about Medium is the ability to surround myself with photos taken from the internet or whatever, my own set of references. I could have like an IMAX size screen just full of collages of images that I'm like, okay, what about this one? Let's see. I want to be inspired by the teeth of that, and let's move that around. Okay, I'm done with you. Let's see. Let's look at the eyes here. It's just such a great way of working that way, because you want to be surrounded with what inspires you, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you pull from, and this is and you're in a virtual space where you can surround yourself physically with that. So yeah, this was a character that I was working on for the Substance demo, but I want to work on her some more because I think she's coming out really nicely here. But we'll use this scene as sort of a basis for our creature demo. So I'm going to switch gears here, and actually no, let's open up an empty scene. So, okay, when you load up Medium, this is what you see. And just to kind of go through what the interface is just quickly, for those who don't know, on my left hand here is where my tools are, my tool palette. So you have Move, Clay, Swirl. I only really use Clay and Move and Inflate, as you'll see. And on my right hand is the actual tool that does, when you pick Clay, that's going to be a Clay tool, Move tool. And if I pull down the thumbstick, it brings up the scene graph here. It's just like any other scene graph, like, no surprises. It's like Maya's screen graph or scene graph. Nothing really different from it. And you have the ability to select elements in your scene, like camera, lights, or you could select it through the actual scene too, or the scene graph. So it's fairly straightforward, which is what I like. It's very minimal, which is what I like too, because I could just go in here and create. Get rid of that. So let's go ahead and create something. So this part's gonna be unrehearsed. So this could be a little rough around the edges, but I think it'll be fun. So what I'll first do is create a layer. What time is it, by the way, so I can have a gauge?
It's just about 8 o'clock.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And we're going through like until like 9:30.
Yeah, we can go as long as we need to. I think we're slated to go until about 9:30.
Okay, we could put a lot of scales during that time.
Awesome.
Excuse me. So what I just did, let me undo that, actually. Start from scratch here. So in order to apply geometry, you need a layer, essentially. So I'm going to go Sculpt Layer. And I'm not going to go through too much of the technical aspects of what each tool does. I mean, I think that's going to be a waste of a live stream. I'm just going to kind of glaze through the most important things, and then kind of like I'm not really going to explain what each one of these do. So that's going to be for another more detailed medium demo. So I created a new layer, and again, going back to forms, when I think about a character, I always think about the hierarchy of forms, so primary, secondary, tertiary, right? Always I figure the big forms first. So what are we trying to do right now? So I mentioned Gnomon because y'all are interested in some scale demos, right? So, but I have no idea really what that looks like. So maybe I'll use medium as a way to sketch out some ideas, right? So, but I still always like to use simple geometric shapes. So I apply that layer, and then I keep saying this, but I hate this blazing white default color. So I'm gonna paint that as a sort of a muted gray. And then from here, I like to adjust some of the specular settings, because we were talking earlier about how I use specularity to gauge the integrity of the shape or the integrity of the form, right? So right now, yeah, you can see some specularity here, but you can also, adjust the roughness, specularity. Kind of want it a bit muted. I don't want it to feel metallic at all. Like I want to get it feeling like actual clay that I used to use, like a gray Sculpey or a Chavant. I tend to mimic reality when I'm in VR. So even in the background right here, I'm going to select world. I'm going to click off skybox. I'm going to click off ground plane. And I just want to be in darkness, because when I used to sculpt in clay, it's just in a dark room with it sounds depressing, with a lamp kind of pointed, 45 degrees to the sculpt, and that's how I would sculpt. And, being that this is so close to clay and how it feels, I can mimic that. So I went over to the move tool right now, and I just kind of want to play around with how this first shape can look. If we're talking about a Gnomon, I'm always trying to think of interesting shapes. I want to get away from the feeling of a guy in a suit. I want to have some form of caricature to any character that I do. So if it's a bounding box where it's just a pretty much straight up square, I want to just taper that and really, exaggerate it.
Now, it looks like you're using the move tool, just like you would in ZBrush, in the sense the scale of the sphere is going to influence the the kind of the smoothness of the moving, as it were. Exactly.
Yeah. And if you notice, the smoothness of the move is defined by the size of the sphere. And at this stage in the game, if you notice, the size or the radius is big. I rarely do I ever go this size and scale, because what does that do? Surprise, surprise! It introduces wobblies, which is no wobblies in this demo. I hope. This is an anti-wobbly demo. And I'm just like, again, I have no idea right now what this creature is going to look like. I'm just placing forms is what I'm doing, and thinking about gesture. Is this going to be sort of like a hunched over creature, or a little bit more regal, right? Like right now I'm kind of leaning towards no pun intended, a hunched, sort of a hunched creature. And I'm kind of feeling like, oh, that neck is feeling a bit too human. Maybe there's a setting in Move where if I click off active layer only, it actually allows you to move all the layers that are active, or visible, I should say. So kind of like just adjusting this. And maybe it's not, you know, the hunched creature thing has been sort of like a cliche. Maybe this is more of a creature from Atlantis that's more regal, right? Like this merman. Just like wide, you know, open up the shoulders a little bit. So let's work on the face here. And, you know, kind of having some ideas now of maybe what this creature can look like. So, you know, let's add this. Oops, let me get out of that mode. Kind of just fish-like. Let me just save this really quick. And let's give it eyes. At this point, you know, it's good to give an idea, get an idea where the eyes would be. Maybe there's like an underbite. And gills, perhaps.
Now, when you land a new form, like a brand new shape, does it automatically set it up as a new layer, or are you doing that yourself?
Oh, I'm doing that myself. So I just kind of get in a habit of like new layer. Oops. Hold on, let me just click, and then I already have. I'm going to delete that. So I will say I want to add like a gullet here. New layer, and then clay. So I'm just filling in the silhouettes right now to kind of. I'm designing now how the flow of this creature is in silhouette, right? So if you notice, like I like the fact that you can non-destructively move these layers, because what is important for me at this point is that I designed the intersection of how the separate forms lock into each other. And as you'll see later, that's going to be a very important aspect of the work. So
this is already a game changer for me, just watching how you're approaching this. I've tried some sculpting in media myself, but the workflow you're doing right here with the layers gives an incredible amount of control.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer is the correct word of use. So thank you for that. But yeah, it totally is. So I'm going to go ahead and use the inflate tool here as a way to just further sketch some ideas. Like I'm in concept mode right now, right? So I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to start. Maybe for now, let's combine. I'm going to combine these two meshes. I just want to get an idea of what this creature looks like. Maybe instead of the lip line being there, it's like up here. You know, I'm always looking at flow, right? Like if this edge is here, the eye kind of just leaves the piece. I always want to bring it back in. So your eyes travel. There's a rhythm to a piece. When I'm exploring forms, I'm always doing that.
We've got a viewer that's asking what resolution you're using for the initial block-in phase.
Fairly low resolution. I mean, this is sort of like how you can kind of tell what resolution you're in. It's not like ZBrush where you can, you know, it tells you how many polygons, but I like to work low res. The same with ZBrush. As you can see, you know, that's pretty low res. And that's all you need. That's all I need right now at this point. So I also want to show, so this is one way of creating marks, right? But one tool that I also like to use, if I go to primitives, is this stamp shape. And, you know, it acts like a, you know, damn standard in ZBrush, right? Like sort of like a gouge. It's not doing it. Hey. How come it's not? That is weird. It's supposed to gouge. Oh, I have it set to single. Single is just like for additive. You just want that shape. That's the shape. But if I set it to continuous, I can use the stroke to define the stroke with a shape. So going back again to, so I can kind of just draw on the surface right now. Oops. Smooth is a bit too high. I'm going to knock it down because resolution's low. I kind of like what this thing, this was an accidental, whatever this is. I'm kind of just using that as a part of the design. And as you notice, like I'm using the edge of this top to also add edges, similar to damn standard, right? I can use it additively. Or subtractively. And if this is a higher resolution mesh, it'll definitely feel a lot better in terms of like it'll feel like you're gouging clay. All right, now let's not dilly-dally too much on like the details. I kind of want to focus more on the head and kind of leave this just indicated for the sake of time. But say, you know, we have an idea of what this thing could look like. I just want to, you know, kind of more fish-like, looking more amphibious actually. I'm going to go switch modes and go back to my layer mode, and I'll go ahead and kind of like right now it's just sort of indicated. So I want to reinforce these areas now with actual form. Right. So it'd be cool if, you know, like fish, they have sort of lips. Almost like human-like lips. Do another shape here. As you can see, like once you get at a cadence, then things are, that you get in a good flow. And what I'll do is rather than creating a new one, I'll just duplicate this and then kind of just pull from there for speed's sake, which is a trick that I like to do. Save, always remember to save. And what I'm doing is I'm just going through all these indicated forms now with actual shapes so that you see the sculpture better. You know, I've already done the due diligence of sketching it out, so I'm kind of now like just okay. Well, now it's fun time. You know, I want to kind of like get some good character going here. What is the time that we have actually?
It's about 8:17 right now.
Okay.
So you're doing good. Viewers asking, if you can think back kind of when you were first sort of, you know, learning Medium, how would you describe it in terms of the initial learning curve? And like, is it fairly intuitive? Does it come fairly quickly to grasp the tools?
Yeah, I mean, it's like clay to hands. You know, as you guys can see, not once have I opened up a menu that kind of collapses and you know, everything that I've done is just within the viewport, like here and here. You know, it is the most simple in a good way interface, because it just allows you to just not even think about the interface at all. You're kind of just creating, and at this point where my hands are trying to catch up with what my brain is thinking. Like right now, I had no idea coming here with what I would do. I'm doing this on the fly. So the fact that I can, you know, sketch something like this out as I'm talking to you guys and as I'm working really speaks to how optimized Medium is for work. Otherwise, I would be like doing this and then, okay, then let's go to this menu here and then do this, and this. I am just here talking, having fun with y'all, and placing clay, digital clay, right? I'm thinking that'd be a cool like nose here. And what I'm doing is I'm actually using the clay to just push it around, and I'm designing the forms now. Like right now, things are looking like, okay, they're kind of shaping up here. So I duplicated the eyes.
Got a viewer who's asked, would you recommend Medium for someone that has never sculpted with clay before?
Absolutely. It's for well, for one, it's the closest you can get to sculpting in clay in digital form, right? Because it actually exercises your ability to see depth in your work outside of the 2D screen. And as a sculptor, you know, like that is a very important thing in your toolkit, to be able to see things in the round. You know, I am not only looking when I'm gauging form and silhouette. I'm not just looking here. I'm looking, like, you know, when you're driving, you're looking at the horizon line, right? Past the horizon line, to anticipate how the road will turn. And with that, I'm able to really gauge just how clean my forms are going to be.
Yeah, because you mentioned earlier, you can't convey this looking at what you're doing on a 2D screen, but I know from just being in VR, you can see around. Like you can almost look around, you know, because you've got depth perception.
Yeah,
it's got to feel a little different than ZBrush in that sense. Like you said, for sketching, just you kind of see it all right there for yourself.
Exactly.
Someone's wondering if you can bring a ZBrush model into Medium to work on it. Yep,
you can, and you can export this out as an OBJ, bring it into ZBrush, and vice versa. You can import it in Medium, any OBJ or FBX. For sure, yeah.
Now, if you bring an FBX into Medium, will it also bring in some of the other properties that it might have, like the anything has been mapped to it, or color and things like that?
Oh, you know what? I've not actually tried that yet, so I'm not able to answer that with confidence, because I've only been mostly sculpting in Medium and exporting it out in ZBrush. But I've not had the opportunity to do that. So let me just design what the jawline here is doing. But yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to just kind of ask any questions, guys. Like I'm answering as I'm going here. So maybe just
there's a question of regards to how you gauge VR over clay. I don't know if they're wanting to compare the two and say which is better, but because you've worked in both mediums, no pun intended. What is it like knowing clay as well as working in the medium software?
I mean, I work in clay. I mean, when I say work, I wasn't even doing it as a profession. So it was like more of a hobby. But I did clay a long time ago. But I would say that it did help my my medium work because, again, that prepped me for it's like riding a bike. Like, okay, well, this is just like clay. I'm in there. I'm able to, like what we were talking about, see things in the round and all that stuff. So it helped me actually to become a better medium user, I feel, because I noticed that a lot of people are intimidated because they've never had clay, the experience of working with clay, and that is a very intimidating thing to work in such a new way, manipulating in dimension. Whereas a lot of the clay sculptors, when they're in medium, they're like, oh, this is just like clay, So there's that interesting aspect of it. So I'm just gonna combine things here.
We've got another viewer who has asked if you were going back and learning to sculpt all over again, or talking to someone who's just getting ready to learn to sculpt, how would you suggest they do things today with a lot of the different kinds of tools and capabilities that we have?
I would say definitely start with clay. It's in my opinion that when you devote your time learning the traditional aspect of the art, that is always a better path than learning digital first. Now, obviously, if you're digital by profession, you got to learn the digital tools. But keep up with I would keep up with my practice of working in clay, devote more time in that, because learning ZBrush or learning medium or any of these tools, that's secondary to getting the ability to manipulate things with dexterity in 3D in a dimensional way. That's the stuff that really takes years, if not like a lifetime to master, not really the software. So I would say I would learn as much as you can traditional, I should say, and the digital stuff will come in naturally. All right, so what I did was I just combined things here, and what I'll do is start softening forms. So what I did was, what I'm doing right now is I'm selectively smoothing just to indicate skin over these forms, right? Just lightly smoothing out blending forms together, yet keeping certain areas contrasty. So say this line right here, I want to kind of just blend that in a little bit, but retain these contrasting points, because in my head, since there's skin over this whole thing, there's a stretch here. So if the skin's not going to have an undercut, if there's a stretch, it's going to be fairly straight. So I'm kind of, that's my thinking as I'm going through. So I'm taming the forms right now, whereas before it was very bam, it's like a very separated. I'm just taming everything right now, blending it in.
Now, something I've been curious about is, obviously in traditional clay, you have the weight of the clay and you're physically pushing against it. In ZBrush, we have, the pen to tablet where there's pressure sensitivity and kind of have that tactile feeling. When you're working in VR, how is it sort of adjusting to the fact that you don't feel any form of resistance against what you're doing with your hands?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, there's no getting around that fact right now. Like, you can have fatigue because of the fact that there's no tactile object to when I'm working in clay. If this was in clay, there's feedback, obviously. So my arms floating isn't being like fatigued as much. So with VR, since it's a friend of mine, Matt from Valve, he called it air sculpting, which is essentially what it is, right? So to circumvent that, what I do, I mean, I don't know if you guys can see me right now through the small window, but my elbows are to my chest. I'm not really, my arms aren't outstretched. So I'm working like a T-Rex. Yeah, I'm kind of like a mini T-Rex right now.
Yeah.
And also, what I like to do is, if say I'm doing this, doing like a mark, I most likely will scale it up, because if it's small, I'm a coffee drinker, kind of, and I want like a nice swoop. It's harder because the noise is being localized on the wrist, right? You're kind of like, man, this is never going to work. But if you scale it up, and you can then redistribute that jitter all throughout your body. Like, I'm actually using my body to create the curves. And if I'm standing up, which is what I usually do when I work in VR, I can use my body. It's like dancing, man. You're kind of just awesome. Like walking around, being active with it.
You stay fit then.
Yeah, actually, I mean, better than sitting my ass down for long periods of time, right? But yeah, so when I work in VR, I mostly stand up. But for this demo, I'm sitting down because I don't want y'all to see my, because you'll just see the bottom half of my body if I'm standing up. Okay, so we'll start adding details later, but I'm still kind of like, okay, let's make this a little bit more naturalistic. What time do we have? Sorry.
We're just about 8:30.
Okay. So let's see, settings. Oops. Actions, increase resolution.
Okay. Someone was asking, is there a poly limit or like a limit to the number of layers that you can have? Is there any limits that you need to consider working inside?
I mean, there is a poly limit, like what each layer has sort of like you can see that bounding box, right? Since it's not polygons, it's SDF, I believe. If I keep upping the resolution, obviously, I mean, there's a lot of research. VR is tricky because with VR, you have to be able to display this twice on in your for the eyes, right? So I'm not really explaining that correctly, but there's a technicality there where your VR resources are a little bit more limited than desktop. So yeah, the limitations of resolution is definitely a reality. But saying that, I can get like 30, like remember that dinosaur that I showed you guys?
Yeah.
That was about like 30 million. And to a certain extent, that's all you really need. I'm not really.
Yeah, that's higher than I expected you'd be able to do.
And because what I've recently been doing is I've been using Substance for actually detailing you can actually sculpt ZBrush style in Substance for a lot of the smaller details, kind of like the more the surfacey type style details. All right, I'm just kind of like. Okay, so I mean, this is sort of how our creature is looking like, and I'm gonna switch gears here and start putting some scales on him. I'm like, I can't stop. I gotta make sure to. Okay, add that ridge or whatever that is. All right, so let me save this. Before I put the scales, I always want to, like details like scales, you want that to make sense. Obviously, it has to flow with what you have as a design, right? You can't just like arbitrarily put scales. It has to abide by the flow. And what I've done here was, I've created a hierarchy of shapes that are readable. Like when I zoom out, you can hopefully read the skull structure, the primary to secondary shapes. The danger of adding things like scale and detailing is you may muddle that. I always want to preserve that as much as I can, because that is the sculpture. Details are never as important as the bigger forms here. So we're in like a dangerous territory here, is what I'm saying. So I always have to keep that in mind when I'm about to put something like scales. Sorry, you were going to ask a question.
Oh no, somebody just came in with a question. Is there any sort of masking that you can do in Medium right now?
Currently, no. There's no masking capabilities.
Well, I feel like the thing you were doing earlier, where you're just laying in a new shape with its own layer and then being able to independently control those, that's kind of a great way to get that level of control.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, to be able to isolate certain areas, right? Yeah. So I'm kind of just, even with scales, I'm thinking of it as like, what are the primary forms of the scales? I'm still trying to kind of figure out the pattern. Like, what are the primary forms? When I say primary forms, this is not going to be one big scale. This is going to be a group of scales, right? So I'm kind of just like designing it with.
Even just that's looking really cool.
Yeah, I mean.
Now, I noticed you had some hard surface elements you did on some of your other sculpts, and I realize this isn't a hard surface demo, but how did you achieve that? Is there like some sort of a planar tool, or how do you get those nice hard surface edges?
Same method as I showed you, with the addition of more Boolean style operations.
Okay, yeah.
To kind of like say, okay, let's demo that really quick. New layer. Say there's like a scoop. Now I could do it like this. Oops. Or I could do it as this. But with this, you can actually. This is actually also cool for creatures. Like this is almost like a hard surface creature-y. So I select this, whatever you select. I guess it's like in Maya, right? You select in order of what you want to subtract from. So I select this one, and I want this to be subtracted from it. And under actions, there's a subtract. I'm going to undo that because it's too deep, but yeah. So that's how cool. That's how I would do it. Let's get back to our scales here. What is our time?
Sorry. Just 8:36.
Okay. Oh, actually, we still have a lot of time here. So if you notice, let me see if I can increase the resolution one more time. I think we can. Or not. Oh, there we go. And once you're actually adding resolution, that's when the fun time comes in, because it then starts to feel a lot more like clay. Like when I switch on to my favorite tool here, I call it the needle nose for some odd reason. And what I could do is I can position, by default, when you pick a stamp, this is sort of where it puts it, like at the tip of your tool. But if I hold down the thumbstick here, it lets go of the stamp and I can position it wherever I want. And what's great about that is if you're a sculptor and you use, like, say, Kemper tools, you know, this for me isn't really an ideal position to start sculpting in. But if I'm holding a tool, a sculpting tool, you know, it's usually aligned with my thumb, or the way I'm holding it right now. If you imagine that's like a Kemper tool and the tip is over there, you can mimic how, you know, positionally how you would hold your Kemper tools. And what's great about that is once you're in this mode of work, it really feels like you're working in clay, like in terms of ergonomically, and as well as just the vibe of it, because you're kind of manipulating this digital surface like it's really there. And oftentimes I forget that I'm actually in VR. Like the mind forgets. Like I think that this is reality. as corny as that sounds, but once you're in here for quite a long time, then that's what happens. You know.
How are you controlling the depth of those cuts with that tool?
Right now, it's just by hand. There's no what would you call it, like hardness or intensity. There's no intensity setting to clay right now, so it's essentially, if you imagine this being like whipped cream, it's
oh sure,
that right now, yeah. So that's one way of adding those details. How come it's strength at 0? That's why. So I'm just smoothing, but I actually like the inflate right now for this. So I'm just gonna.
So you're just doing a reverse inflate right now.
Yeah. So I can do additive or subtractive. But any questions, please, again, feel free. Now's the.
Someone wants to know where you see VR advancing in the next 5 years. In other words, you know, what's something that's we don't have at present yet that you'd like to see implemented in the future?
I'm actually really interested in AR and sort of like working this way, but I can see the world around me. I think that would be cool because that opens it up to like, say, a live sculpting group. You know, like I'm with a group of friends. There's a live model there, or just a group of friends in a room, and we're doing like a monster sculpting night. You know, I did a VR session with Glauco and Romain, and my friends Glauco and Romain, who are awesome sculptors, and we were both here in VR, but they were avatars with their digital clay, and it's just not the same. You know, I mean, it's still cool, but I would love for VR to be more integrated in reality, because I'm very passionate about education. Like I like to teach, and so I think that's an element that needs to happen. Is you know, like it's going to be most effective when we're at that state in VR.
Yeah, that'd be really cool if it also could kind of treat your actual physical environment like a HDRI, you know, to light your, so it looks like it's in the room with you.
Yeah, like the way it's lighting it is, you know, instead of this, it's actually my own lamp, right?
That's amazing. Cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool.
So what I'm doing here is, again, to ensure the readability of this form, is, if you notice, I'm not keeping it all in the same scale, no pun intended, scale in terms of size. You know, I'm kind of like giving this a bigger pattern here, but as it kind of gets into certain areas, I'm varying up the size of the small details, right? Just so there's like a compression, an expansion, and then maybe a compression again right here. And again, I'm just really being sort of allowing myself to be dictated by where the rhythm, I mean, it sounds very arty-farty, but it really isn't. Like, you know, when you're sculpting, there's a rhythm, a flow to your piece, and that propagates all the way down to this level. It should, at least, because then that's what I'm doing. You know, if you notice, I'm not just going boop, boop, boop. There's a flow. You know, this feels like this needs to kind of be like this instead of maybe this. Okay, so say we have a network of channels that make it look like scales. I'm going to switch now to a different mode where first let's save, create a new layer, and I'll switch to my favorite. Maybe for scales, there's a really cool one I like to use.
We've got somebody wondering what kind of headset you're using currently.
Oh, it's the Rift S. So it's the next generation of the Rift, Oculus Rift line. So it's got a really good display, and it's an inside-out sort of a way of tracking where you are positionally. Whereas the Rift, the first generation, you had to have like 2 cameras outside on your desk. This one, it's like all integrated in the headset, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I just, looking at this area right here, just added a new shape. And what I'm doing is, if you notice, I'm playing with the intersection, but what I'm interested in is to fill in the edge, right? I don't like to leave my sculpts as just like loosely indicated, you know, because typically some people, maybe they're happy with this, like, okay, that's the detail, done. I always have to go in there and reinforce every single one of these as form, right? Again, you saw that dinosaur. Every single one of those scales is still form. There's volume to them, and there's a relation to how they butt up against other scales, you know. And that's what I'm going to be doing here. And then to make this a speedy process, rather than like, okay, I got to do another layer, blah blah blah, I take what's already there. So I just select this, I duplicate with a big grab tool. I just move it around, like, okay, what's next here? Okay, maybe this one. And it may seem very time consuming, because it is, but it really is a different way of working in terms of CG style detailing. You know, again, it's closer to what a practical sculptor would do, because typically the methodology would be like, you know, you ZBrush alpha it out and all that stuff, but this is actually, you're still thinking of detail as form, which is very important. Detail, you know, shouldn't really be thought about as surface detail. Yeah, when it comes to pores, sure, but when it comes to like a certain scale or a certain size, you know, it should still be treated as form, you know, because in some cases people would just go, okay, I'm going to alpha this in, but I mean, do you see the difference, right? Like you're actually, you have dimension to these scales now.
Yeah, it feels like you're doing a lot more of like you're actually mimicking what nature does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because sometimes you do have to, you know, it's great to have an alpha and slap that on there, but you still have to work with it to get it to feel more natural.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you really got to fight that.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really cool, though.
And you can, you know, get that sort of layered look, like the undercut. Oops. And then from here, I'm just like, again, still concepting on the fly, right? Like I'm kind of like, and not once did I leave this viewport to open up a menu, right? Like most of the stuff I've done here, I was here, like from selecting to I mean, outside of adding clay through this interface. And what's also cool that I should show is you can create custom stamps. Like say, let's do a single stamp here. Let's get out of mirror mode right now. It's getting a bit dark. Let's change the color of, give it a bit more vibrancy. So where's my new layer? Oops. Hold on. Trying to reorient myself here. So say, I want a very specific looking, where's my light? There we go. A very specific looking scale. What I'll do is, say maybe it has more of a serrated vibe.
Now, while you're working with your custom stamp here, I've got someone who's asked, when you're working with stamps, is there a way to like precisely move or align them?
Not really. I mean, there's the manipulation tools here.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Even then, like, to be quite honest, I'm not happy with the ability. Like, it's sort of like I need more control when it comes to this. So I've just been treating medium as more of a, manipulation. It's just I just use a big grab tool and move it around. But yeah, no, I'm sure you can do it. And I haven't really invested enough time in the manipulation tools because I just wasn't happy with them, to be honest with you. So I may not be the right person to answer that question. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Well, yeah, but it's good to know that you've got sort of that move gizmo, as it were.
Yeah.
That you can...
I mean, if you think of medium as more of a, it's clay, and the concept of accuracy is really, it's not there right now. It's not like a CAD tool or anything like that, right? It's a tool for concepting and actually doing sculpts that are not really accuracy based. Everything's like by eye. So let's say this is our custom stamp, whatever that is, and what I could do is, what was it? I forgot where is it stamp? Oh, okay. So create a custom. Sorry, I should have practiced this part before. Well, anyway, you can. Oh, there it is. It becomes now a stamp. So I can then use this in. Let's see, maybe it's a cool one to use anyway. Say like around here. Actually, that ended up looking pretty cool.
That's neat. Yeah.
So kind of, and that's the thing. Like you can have your own set of stamps. You import stuff from LiDAR scans or scans, or make a library of your own for scales. Kind of like, okay, well, let's see.
That's cool.
Yeah, and again, you're kind of just like going with the flow, right? You're kind of like designing this.
And yeah, and I can see what you mean by it's so much more like, it's like I'm watching you work with traditional clay. You're just sort of like laying and stretching your clay on there.
Yeah.
Layering it up.
Oops. Yeah, exactly. Let's delete this. Oh, what the hell? I don't know what happened there. Let's delete this one. Okay. That's unfortunate. So I'll just one by one delete this. How come it's not deleting? It's just the layers. I don't want to delete all that stuff. That stuff's looking cool. Like, hold on. I just got to figure out why this is not deleting. Any questions in the meantime?
Well, I was wondering, you know, at this stage, let's say you did want to adjust some of your primary forms. Like maybe you wanted the, you know, the portion where the eyes are, those shapes to be a bit smaller, a bit larger. Is there a way that you'd approach that in Medium?
Oh, I found out what it is. Sorry, if you can repeat that again.
Well, yeah, if you like, you're at a more of a detailed phase right now, but if you wanted to go back and move or make some adjustments to your more primary forms, like the size of those, you know, almost like ocular bulbs you've got there, how would you go about doing that?
Oh, I can either scale it up.
Oh, okay. So you haven't merged everything together yet.
But I mean, if
you left some of it.
If I did merge it, then it would be a little trickier. I would probably, let's say, let's merge it right now. I would just kind of like with a big move tool.
Oh yeah.
Kind of more amphibious looking thing. Okay, so that was my custom stamp, and you know, I'll just keep having fun with this and talk it through. And then if you guys have any questions.
You mentioned earlier, you know, some of your sculpts, you'd start them out in Medium and then bring them into ZBrush for refining. What's that threshold like for you? Like, where do you feel like it's better to stay in Medium, and then, you know, then it's better to go over to ZBrush? What's the pipeline for that, as it were?
Good question. For me, Medium, I would pretty much call it a day in Medium. When I'm at a level where, say, let's work on this one here. Like, say if I flesh out detail that's to this scale. In my opinion, that's where ZBrush comes in handy now, because then, you know, I can, you know, say there's like a network of scales here that I've taken the due diligence to make sure that they're as clean as possible. But obviously, it being an organic creature, you know, nature has chaos. That's when I would take it into ZBrush and start applying subtle noise in terms of the stamp, or also the dam standard, you know, which is which ZBrush is awesome about is the resolution. Man, like that's it's a beast when it comes to like pushing polygons. So I may actually remesh it and up-res it some more to really get the refinement of each individual sections, like do a dam standard pass, like a clay buildup, and then like the alpha pass of you know, applying that alpha noise, that surface noise on top of everything. So yeah. So I'm just detailing this out, and then let's move around. It'd be cool to flesh out the lower part. Since what time do we have? Sorry.
We're almost at 9 o'clock, so we've got about another half an hour.
Okay. Let's do some body anatomy work here.
Now, one of our viewers is wondering how you feel about, are you excited about photogrammetry and other depth sensing capture tech for your process?
I haven't really put much thought into it, honestly, but I know Apple, you know, like with iPhone 12, there's the LiDAR, you know, like it's getting better and better to capture the world around you. and yeah, I mean, I think I'm processing it right now. It's like, I think that's a good thing. You know, it's an exciting thing because that allows me to take from reality and build like a stamp, you know, library of my own. You still need to, at the end of the day, I think if people are concerned about losing some form of stability with their job because everything's going to be automatic, I think the way I look at it is, you know, you use it to your advantage, because, you know, you can't capture a gill man from real life. So, you know, I'm gonna use, like, say, oh, there's a fish in the market. I capture it using that method. I put it in my stamp library, and maybe instead of creating this stamp here, I'll use. It's kind of like alphas in ZBrush, right? Like,
Sure.
You have a library of alphas. You're kind of just manipulating, and there's like happy accidents of like mixing this with maybe some other stamp that you didn't think would fit. Like, I didn't even think that would fit there, but if that was sort of like a fish scale thing or a tree bark thing that I took from real life, then, you know, it just opens it up to more creative, happy accidents, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
that's sort of my story right now, and I'm sticking to it. Could change, but that's how I'm currently feeling about it. So let's see. So it's kind of looking like something here. I mean, obviously, I would, you know, if we had the whole day together, I would just go through and do this treatment all the way through, and work on the gills a little bit. Oops. And at this point, I like to keep, in favor of resolution, I like to keep things separate, like the head to the body. And it's just convenient that this thing is a fish person, because we could do like a hard cut line here. But if this was sort of like a person, like one of the pieces that I was showing you guys of people, there's like blending techniques that I usually do to make sure head and body blend, because if I combine it, same with ZBrush, head to toe as one resolution, then, you know, it's not really the best way to conserve on resolution. And for me, the most important aspect is the face, so I'll devote every resolution I can on the face. Let's keep fleshing them out some more. Actually,
someone's wanting to know, currently in Medium, do you have the ability to collaborate with another sculptor?
Yeah, there's the studio share, but you can't manipulate each other's sculptures. You know, someone can be, you could be here with me right now, and we can, you know, I see you as an avatar in studio share mode, and I can say I'm conducting a class, or you're conducting a class. We could, you know, use this as our like talking point. I can, yeah, this is how I would do the scale, and you're here watching. So that's the extent of the collaboration. I cannot give you my controller and you yourself will manipulate this for now. I don't know. Again, I don't know what the plans are for that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm just loving from watching what you're doing tonight is this way of sculpting by laying in these shapes, these layers and these shapes. Because I think, you know, a lot of times in ZBrush, you can just quickly, you know, start thinking in terms of just using a brush to add on clay. But this seems to really keep you in that mode of thinking about form, like you said at the beginning.
Yeah, it's such a different methodology, because if you think about it, ZBrush, it's a polygonal surface, unless you're in Sculptress mode, right, where it's similar to Medium, I guess. But for the most part, ZBrush users like myself, we're building up, pulling, gouging from that one surface. You know, we're not really thinking about the additive nature of what I'm doing. You know, this is like if you take a class in like Florence Academy of Art, like a sculpting class, you know, they would they would ask you to dab like what I'm doing here, clay by clay, little rivulets of clay to build the form until you have the form. So it's more akin to that type of thinking when you're sculpting, versus like I call it more of an illustrative way of sculpting, because you have your tablet and you're drawing on the surface with ZBrush, right? Which is awesome. You're illustrating, you're drawing your lines, you're drawing your detail. Medium, it's a different way to think about it, where you're actually sculpting. This is, in my opinion, and there's nothing wrong with the ZBrush way by any means. Maybe that's better for some people and this is better for some, but this for me is really what sculpting is about, because it, like what you said, it forces you to really think about these shapes as you're laying it down in isolation. If this was ZBrush and I'm just doing this, it'd be like indicated and I'll refine it later. Here I'm like really thinking about how the design of each and every single one of these shapes, and in turn my sculptures end up being stronger because of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I'm kind of like, okay, look, I really want to blend everything together, right? Okay, so accidentally when I pull this out, it's like, oh, this answers my question. I'll just kick this back in, maybe this way, because I always want to just, again, marry everything in terms of like worthy. I don't want anything to feel isolated, any areas, right? Just maybe adjust that a little bit. And let's actually work on this area here. There's some interesting looking things that we could do. Maybe let's go back to my stamp. Nah, let's just use this one. So again, if I'm, if I'm working here, I don't just leave the mark there. If you notice, I'm actually pulling it all the way here, because then that creates the rhythm line that I really am always looking for. And I never just leave it here. I'll kick it up all the way up here. Because when I merge this and blend everything together, you get that nice, again, like just that flow. And then I just duplicate that. See already, like, oh, that's already a cool design, just by the nature of me doing that. When I drag it down, I can it's already doing it for me for free. Like the design of how that is.
Yeah.
As well as this. And it's giving me further ideas of like, okay, maybe instead of it here, this kind of crawls up, right? It's pretty cool. Maybe right now I'm feeling like it's kind of going with it. Maybe I kind of want to swoop it back this way. Yeah, it feels a little better.
One of our viewers wants to know, can you use Medium with the Vive?
Currently, no. I know there's a way some users have been using it through the Revive via Steam. But right now it works best with Oculus because of the controllers. I mean, I would love Medium to eventually be in like the Index or whatever, but that is not something I can expand on, because that's like more of the Medium team's thing, like for them to better speak on behalf of that. So but for now, I know some artists in the community have been using the Vive and Medium through Revive. It's like an app or plugin or something that they do.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of just wanted to accentuate that zygomatic bone.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and combine. Where are we with time? Sorry.
We still got about another 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I love how, different tools get you to think in different ways, like you were saying earlier. And I can already see how, spending some time in Medium is, for me anyway, getting me, it's going to help me return to the basics and really, really think about my forms.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my Rift S is hanging right here next to me, so I think I know what I want to do after the stream.
Put it to use, man. It's like crying for it, like it's gathering dust and meant to be used.
Well, I think the first time I ever saw, like in Medium, I became aware of it. I was actually watching Finian McManus do environments in Medium.
He's awesome, yeah.
And I was blown away when I started trying to do that. Again, the whole scale thing, right? Like you're not just making a small model of your environment; you're actually in the environment, making it around yourself.
For environment artists, I mean, the stuff that Finian does, and there's a lot of like really amazing, like if you guys go to the Adobe Medium Facebook group, there's a lot of amazing work there that's being done by various artists in the community. Like from physical chess pieces, they would sculpt it in Medium, print it out, and then there's this one artist who does like really awesome masks. I believe his name's Zane. He does these really awesome masks in Medium and prints it out like it's just the most ornate looking things.
Wow.
And I get, probably through this method that I'm showing you guys, I gotta scratch my forehead. The thing about VR is like, there we go. So I'm just kind of refining the eyes a little bit more. It's looking more like more of an amphibious looking critter than anything. So it's going to add more design elements here. Maybe let's switch modes to the needle nose. Let's go. The thing about this one right now is since the resolution is pretty high. Okay, if the stamp is big, see that?
Yeah.
So if it's small, it's actually better, which is fine. Like this is like,
yeah,
that's like butter.
Well, you're getting fantastic results by just sort of gouging in very liberally with that tool and then smoothing over.
Yeah, and depending on like the setting of my smooth, right? I can control just how pillowy that becomes. And one trick is I found recently is instead of to again get around the fact that you're sculpting in air and there's very little control in terms of intensity, right? Instead of what I find doing, instead of like doing this, like just moving my tool hand entirely, what I do is I keep it in place and I move it with the other hand, or a bit of both. Like I'm kind of like so you're getting better results that way.
Yeah, no, I think I heard you talk about doing that on another demo a while back. That extra control you get by being able to utilize your left hand there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I feel like there needs to be some coolness going on here. It's just feeling a little bare.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's what I love about this stamp. And certain stamps, you just, again, I keep saying it, but what I love about it, it's like, to quote Bob Ross, like the happy accidents, right? You're kind of like, oh, I didn't know. If I do it this way with the tip out, it then becomes like a damn standard.
Right.
You
you almost had like kind of that fibrous kind of gill.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, I didn't even think about that. Like, right?
That's cool.
Yeah. So again, like I would have thought of that until you said it, but it's like an accidental. Let's see that we could put that somewhere here.
So are you calling that out? Are you going to be the Bob Ross of Medium?
No, no one could ever replace Bob Ross, man.
That's right.
Yeah, so you're kind of like,
Oh, wow.
I'm controlling the angles, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like that usually would be better. Like maybe, well, I'm getting a bit too specific here now. It's like, Geo, it's just a demo. It's not, it's not for a client. Maybe let's scoop this in. Let's create some space here. I think I know exactly where to put. We're going through this together. It's like an adventure of design. Maybe around here. Hold on. Because you know how like fish, when you lift their gills up, you have that.
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, sort of like a layered effect here at the bottom. Kind of goes underneath, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, hell yeah. It's a good one. And then I kind of want to give it more of a cartilagey vibe, the maw, right? Kind of maybe scoop that in a little bit. Just so we're getting contrasts of like different areas or different types of shapes.
Yeah.
So what I like to do in this case is, let me just reset this. There's a linear constraint here, and I'm going to create a new layer. And then I'm just going to create a strip. Get out of constraint. Oh, I didn't want mirror, actually. Go back to constraint. Let's do that again. And what I'll do is I'm going to keep this. Let's up the resolution of that a little bit. Go to move. I'm going to duplicate this. And this is what I would do. It's a little low resolution. Sorry, I'm gonna redo that again really quickly. Create a new layer. This defines the resolution in terms of
okay.
orb. Yeah, so if you notice, I'm doing that. I just want to capture. Okay, that should be good. It's a little bit higher resolution. Duplicate.
So by kind of dragging it larger, your environment larger, you up the resolution?
It's the inverse. The smaller it is,
okay.
I kind of avoid explaining that a little bit because of it's a little tricky to explain. But yeah, you kind of, that's the inverse. If the orb is small, it's more resolution. If it's big,
gotcha.
So let's just work on one side since we're like close to time anyway. So this is also how I would approach hard surface modeling. With this strip, what I'm interested in is this, soften that just a tad. It's this edge, right? And then again, with a big radius, I could then manipulate this like a Bezier curve. So you're getting, again, see, like I'm using this hand to rotate instead of my tool hand, right? Because I want to really get these nice, beautiful curves.
Yeah, you're getting twice the torque kind of out of the. Yeah,
exactly. You're getting twice the torque.
Oh, this is cool.
And so, well, now you have like a really nice edge. So like when people say, well, medium looks lumpy. No, you can actually, honestly, I've done like shoes and like certain hard surface models. I hope I didn't overly up that resolution so it doesn't crash this way, and you're getting really nice crisp edges to work off of. This may take a while because I think I may have done that a bit too high res. So this is also good to see, like keeping keeping in mind resolution, which is
Sure.
which is a little tricky. So because what I had done was okay, it did it anyway. It's good. See this, the bounding box? That is the bounding box of your model. So we can't get any higher. If not, the model will clip outside of the bounding box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So thankfully, it's like we're like look at that one. Otherwise, it would have clipped it. But see, with that now in place, I can just like smooth it out, blend it in.
One of the things I'm really appreciating about this demo, Gio, is I think for me anyway, one of the biggest things about Medium is just learning how you need to think inside it and how to utilize the tools. Because just watching you tonight, you're solving so many things that I was like, how do I achieve that in Medium? This is fantastic.
That is awesome. That's really good to hear. Thank you. And you know, it's through like many hours of being in there that I've discovered all this stuff, and that's the beauty of it. Like other people will come up with different ways, different solutions to overcome certain limitations, and this has been my philosophy all this time, is like limitations are good, because if Medium had all the bells and whistles and all the menus and options up the wazoo, I never would have come up with a way of working that's conducive to form, right? I mean, this was also in conjunction with another awesome artist, Sam Poirier, who came up with a layer system, and then from there I was like, okay, let's work with that. How will that kind of be conducive to my way of working? And then whoever's watching this will then take that and come up with their own methods, versus like if it's something already set in place, you know, with all the tools and options in place, all the bells and whistles, it's a little harder to be spontaneous with it, and it's still in such an early stage that you can be spontaneous with it, and that's the beauty of where Medium is at right now as a community.
Yeah.
Everyone's just discovering how to work with it and are having fun with it, right? So it's a good time to get into it, to be honest. I mean, I know I probably sound like a salesperson working at Adobe, demoing Medium, but as speaking as an artist, it really truly is an exciting time to be a part of this, because it is such a new way of working, right? Not often do we get to a point in computer graphics content creation where there's a new way of working, and I get that there's resistance, you know, like I was actually honestly surprised at first that like a lot of people are like, yeah, you know, wait and see. And I'm like, I thought you guys would be excited with this. Like, you know, it's a sculpting program. You're in here, VR, you're able to sculpt. But it is such a new thing that people, I think, are a little, again, I don't know what it is, intimidated or probably look at it more as sort of like a fad or a trend. But it really isn't, because I personally feel, and which is why I went to Adobe, because I believe in the fact that in the future, this is the most viable way and most optimized way for us content creators to create sculpturally, right? You're in there, and I don't know, maybe 10 years from now, we're all in MR, mixed reality doing this, versus being stuck in front of a monitor, sitting down. You know, that's the human body's not designed to to sit down for long periods of time. Okay, I mean, at this point, I'm just kind of like, anything I add on to this would be.
Well, I mean, I think you're totally validating Medium. You know, just the level of detail that you're achieving, the way that you've been able to approach it. But again, you need those early adopters to kind of take it on, work with it, and develop the workflows. It reminds me of Photoshop was a photo manipulation tool until guys like Craig Mullins started painting with it.
Oh yeah, I mean I remember that era of like, what, you can do this in Photoshop, or hell, ZBrush started off as not as a sculpting tool, right? Like I remember specifically what the moment where I was like, oh my god, ZBrush is it. This is the future. Was I think the Weta guys like Dave Cardwell and then Kenneth Scott too, I believe he did. Early on, they were doing these like the most amazing models that I've never seen before that in terms of fidelity. And then when I saw that, like, oh, okay, yeah, this is definitely where things are headed, and that's where it headed, right? And so, I feel that Medium is that turning point in terms of a new way of working, right? I kind of wish I gave it a more darker color, I guess. The thing about like when you're applying paint and the resolution is really like there's a lot of resolution. The paint is it's not the best right now. Oh, actually, yeah. Oh, it's in different layers. That's why. That's actually pretty cool, like the different colored scales, kind of.
Oh yeah.
Sort of like.
Yeah, you're almost getting sort of a poly paint kind of thing going.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm gonna undo that. But anyway, I mean that's the demo.
That's amazing.
Pretty much. Hold on, let me undo this. I don't want to end with. There we go. Yeah. So. And then from here, you can just file export. Right now, this creature is at almost 10 million triangles, and you have the ability to adjust the settings of your export. And then from here, actually, what I could do is, from here you can just bring it into like. Substance and then continue with a sculpting or paint it, or ZBrush even, like set up your cavity maps and all that stuff as I mentioned. But at the end of the day, what I want to get out of any model that I do in Medium are nice clean forms, from primary shapes, secondary shapes, all the way down to tertiary shapes. Now, when people say tertiary, I notice that they sometimes talk about it being the surface detail. Tertiary shapes are still shapes or form, and it should be thought of as such. Still treating it as a sculpt, not as a surface glaze to make the specularity a little bit more complex or spread out. No, it's still, when you talk about tertiary shapes or form, it's still form. This is tertiary. That's a tertiary form right there. So that's really cool. Good suggestion on that. I'm going to use that next time.
Yeah, no, I was looking at it like, how would you achieve that in ZBrush? But I think what I like is the economy of tools you're using. Like you said earlier about limitation. You're not preoccupied with the million of options that you could do. You just get to focus on creating with what you've got on hand.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is all I'm using. And if you think about it, we did this, it's not a complete model, in an hour and a half or so. Yeah. Right down to the scales. I've been doing that for a long time, but it also shows just how speed is a big factor in Medium. Like you can get concept this for me would be a good concept phase, and then okay, I'm like happy with this. I'm gonna spend like the next 2-3 weeks going in there and kind of like that dinosaur, just really going at it in really focused Zen mode, right? But this I would call sort of like a good concept phase where okay, I can see the potential of this. I'm gonna maybe take a break from it, like do some screen grabs, put it in Photoshop, see how It could look with certain patterns or whatever, do a paint over, and then get back to it and really refine it, or leave it as a concept model. So,
yeah. No, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing the knowledge. I know that for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people viewing tonight, I think you opened a door. I think we just needed to see how to use it, you know, how to approach it.
Yeah, and it's really easy. It's really, really easy. You know, I can get my niece in here, and she can play with it, and then you can go from there to this, to something else, to a hard surface model. Yeah, so it's all very exciting stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Gio. This has been an awesome time. Thanks for giving of your time to be with us, and I don't know, maybe we'll see this guy evolve at some point as well.
Yeah, I mean,
so it sort of reminds me of a very distant cousin, maybe a distant evolutionary cousin of Admiral Akbar, perhaps.
Yeah, that sort of top heavy sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody that's joined the stream this evening with us. We've had a great time, and again, thank you to Gio. I want to thank my colleague Miranda, who's been producing the stream for us and moderating the chat, getting those questions through. If you would like to see future content on the Gnomon stream, follow us on social media to be the first to know. We've got some amazing streams that are currently in the works that we'll be announcing very soon. So definitely check that stuff out. And stay safe, everybody. Stay creative, and I'll see you back here on the stream really soon. And thank you again, Gio. You have a great night, sir.